Good morning, everyone. It's nice to be here with you all. I'm not really good at using these remotes, so if I go back and forth on the slides, forgive me. So, I have about 20 minutes to talk to you, and I guess what I want to focus on is some of the criteria item in your IPPs, your internship placement profiles. And what I want to do, I don't want to just throw those slides up and say, look at your IPP, use it like this. I want to provide some context for how we have changed that tool over the last 3 years, 4 years, and sort of give some background as to why we changed it, and also help you perhaps when you encounter those particular items, help you understand what it is that we're striving to foster in interns. So, my name is Andrea, and this is what we're going to talk about for the next 20 minutes. So, I want to begin with a little bit of an explanation about what communication looks like in the world that we live in. So, we no longer live in this, and maybe we never did, but I think we used to imagine that we lived in this world where we stayed in our communities, people looked and sounded like we sounded, and everything was familiar. And increasingly, our world is very connected, it's global, we migrate, we interact with others via Skype, via Twitter, in other contexts. And what that means is that communication is affected by those changes in our world. So I'll start out by explaining a little bit what that looks like. Then I want to talk about how we work together in teacher education to foster effective communication for future teachers, interns who are learning to teach in this kind of connected world. And then finally, I want to spend some time thinking about the role of the cooperating teacher in that project of fostering effective communication in interns. Okay, so these global changes that I briefly mentioned, they have implications for communication and pedagogy in schools. So we know that schools are increasingly sites of hyperdiversity. Perhaps not everywhere. There are certainly communities that are much more homogeneous. You see sameness. But in many spaces in our schools, we increasingly see what some researchers might describe as super diversity, hyperdiversity, and that has implications for how we teach. And so Canadian classrooms are increasingly linguistically and racially diverse spaces, and these changes have implications for teacher education, and specifically what we're talking about today for field experiences. Okay, so I want to just share an anecdote that maybe helps us to understand a bit what I'm talking about. So when I am with my family and friends, sometimes I get in the situation where I translate for them. And sometimes it is from one language to another. But often it's from English to English, because I am able to understand Englishes that are very different from mine without too much effort. And sometimes it's a confusing experience, because I will hear the person speak, and then I look like it's a waiter or a waitress in a restaurant, and with my mom, and to me I understand what's being said, and I can look at my mom and see that she has not understood anything that person has said to them. And so I have to sort of say, Mom, she wants to know if you want more bread. And so that experience, it's not because I'm necessarily, I'm not paying more attention, or it's just that I have more experience with hearing Englishes that are different than mine. My ear is sort of a bit more flexible. And some of you who are multilingual, bilingual in the room, or if you have been around people who speak English in different ways, you might have had a similar experience. EAL teachers in our schools are often really good at this. They can understand children and parents from all sorts of backgrounds. So that's a little bit that kind of flexibility that we're trying to foster. Now, I'm just going to move over here. I can't really move without my microphone. Okay. So this is a quote that I like. Yeah, this might be good. Is this on? No.
Yeah, just push. It's on, you just push the...
I push this thing? Okay. Okay. So this is a quote that I like from a scholar named Carmen Chacon. I think it helps us to understand a little bit what I'm talking about. So she says, one of the first things most people notice when I speak English is my accent. It is not uncommon for me to hear the questions, where are you from? Are you Mexican? I am used to comments like, your accent sounds nice. During my second journey as a graduate student in the United States, I got used to hearing the phrase, can you say that again? That would be sort of my mom, what she does. You know, she has to ask the people to repeat. Often, some people looked at me in a puzzled way without saying a word, which made me feel worse than I did when having to repeat myself to make myself understood. Many times I thought to myself, this person has a monolingual ear. For me, a monolingual ear means somebody who belongs to a homogeneous group affiliation and who is not used to diversity or is not willing to understand accents other than his or her own. So I think what's interesting there, now I'm going to move back over, sorry. I should have organized this better. I think what's interesting there is this coming back on? Yes, someone will adjust it, okay. Is that she points out that yes, it is an ability, but she also indicates that it's a choice. So in some cases, there might be an unwillingness. The other accent or the difference in the English might be seen as an imposition. And so sometimes the listener may choose not to understand. I won't spend too much time on that, but I just want to point out sometimes it's not always an ability. Okay, so what are we striving towards? Well, today, successful communication requires what Suresh Kanagaraja refers to as multi-dialectal competence. So that's just a fancy word for being able to say, I'm comfortable with lots of types of my language. So I can, it's not that you are able to perform those English varieties, it's just that you are able to receive them. And what that means is that you develop negotiation strategies. So it might be that you slow down your speech or that you really pay attention to the context that you're in to understand what the person might be talking about. You maybe increase your vocabulary in terms of understanding some of the other terms that other Englishes might use. You really focus on body language. So there are things that you can do to develop negotiation strategies. You go into communication assuming that the person will do English differently than you. So, you know, I was in Kelowna on the weekend and somebody using an English that was different than mine said, let's make a tour. And I know that verb do is sometimes make or do. So I understood that what the person was saying to me was, let's go do a tour, right? And I didn't have to get too confused by that small change because I was sort of expecting that is a verb that can be done differently. So we make use of all the resources that we have and able to negotiate the difference. And we share that burden with the person that we're talking to. So I don't ask the person to repeat themselves necessarily. I try to use my resources to share that interaction with my partner. It's not just the responsibility of the person who speaks English differently